Roger, great to be joined by you today.
Great to be here, Owen. Taking a cue from our mentor, Alex Jones, I do want to focus on our listener calls today. Before I go there, I want to talk about the Mueller investigation and a number of things that I saw yesterday that I found to be somewhat problematic. The Senate Intelligence Committee said that they had reached the logical end with their investigation of former FBI Director James Comey's firing. This was relayed by Senate Committee Chairman Richard Burr, a former used car dealer from North Carolina, at a press conference. This washing of the hands by the Senate committee means that the investigation into the Comey memos to Special Counsel Robert Mueller will be carried out by none other than Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Once again, the fox has been put in charge of the henhouse. Meanwhile, the power vested in Robert Mueller's Russian collusion investigation was undermined significantly at the same press conference when Senator Burr said that they continue to look for, quote, any hint of collusion, which presupposes that they haven't found any to date. There can be no question that the bill for this fishing expedition is costing U.S. taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. At this rate, Mueller is expanding his team of Democrat loyalists. The bill will turn into billions by the time they're finished. Yet another example of the left weaponizing the public money and the judiciary and offices against their political opposition. Mueller's witch hunt is political in nature. Of that, of course, there can be no doubt. Even the casual observer can see the zest and the zeal to, quote unquote, get Trump. Meanwhile, Senator Chuck Grassley correctly says that legislation designed to prevent the president from firing Mueller is unconstitutional because of the separation of powers. Kudos to you, Senator Grassley. But that doesn't stop Robert Mueller from tasking yet another liberal Democrat, Michael Dreeben, from getting ahead of presumptive but non-existent presidential pardons. Owen, they want Mr. Dreeben to undermine the president's power authority and to find some loophole that would prevent the president from pardoning those who were unjustly charged in a partisan witch hunt. You know, Senator Grassley also happens to be the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he ripped into the FBI for their gag order that prevents his panel from getting critical information that they need regarding the firing of FBI Director Comey. Remember, these are co-equal branches of government, and neither the judiciary nor the executive has precedence over Senator Grassley's own inquiry. Grassley spoke of what he called a deal between the FBI and Mueller's Office of Special Counselor. Grassley also alluded to possible Hatch Act violations in the apparent political nature of Comey's statements and that an investigation should proceed against the FBI. That's right, the Congress investigating the investigators. Grassley insisted that non-disclosure agreements were essentially gag orders, plain and simple. They thwart transparency, accountability, and they seek to obstruct congressional oversight, Grassley said in his comments yesterday. Executive branch agencies cannot limit legislative power of inquiry merely by entering into a non-disclosure agreement with each other. Senator Grassley asked this important question: why was the FBI so focused on keeping Congress in the dark? Why are they so afraid of shining the light of day on the controversial decisions Comey made in the months before he was fired? There's a whiff of inappropriate partisan political influence in these institutions under any administration or any party. But this committee, Grassley said, has a duty to get to the bottom of it. Grassley reiterated his comment that key oversight responsibilities of the Justice Department and the FBI are the purview of the Senate Judiciary Committee. the FBI and their bosses, Robert Mueller and James Comey, for lack of response, show that they just don't seem to care. Oh, and we're going to be tracking this entire Mueller investigation very closely.
Well, I think that used car salesmen are going to be upset that you had to throw Dick Durbin, or excuse me, Dick Burr into the conversation with the used car salesman. But, you know, Roger, Mueller's entire thing, they're looking for a fart in the wind, and if they ever actually find it, they're going to realize it came from Hillary and Podesta's ass.
You would think. I mean, notice that there's no inquiry into Ukrainian influence and their efforts to influence the 2016 election. I should be more specific. Ukrainian efforts to assist Hillary in the 2016 elections. We now know that the ledger that alleged that Paul Manafort took $12.5 million in payments from the Party of Regions, the party of Viktor Yanukovych, the Ukrainian president.
All right, Roger, hold it right there. We got to go to break. We're going to have more from Roger as well as your phone calls on the other side. Don't go anywhere. This is The War Room.
I'm Roger Stone, and you're on The War Room with Owen Schroyer and Roger Stone, the newest programming here at InfoWars. And taking a cue from Alex Jones earlier, we're going to be focusing on your calls today. You can reach us by calling 888-201-2244. That's 888-201-2244. Let's take a call from Bill in Maryland. Bill, what's on your mind?
Hi, how's it going?
Excellent.
I got a real quick, just want to plug the Harvest Right freeze dryer. My sister bought one. She loves it. She freeze dries all the leftovers from the meals that she prepares and puts them into vacuum sealed bags, and she is absolutely tickled with it. So anybody who's thinking about buying one of these things, you really should just get off the fence and get one, because they really are fantastic.
How about that? We're running a special on it too right now. 29% off, it looks like, right now on the Harvest Right freeze dryer. Thank you for that plug, Bill.
No problem. I'm thinking about grabbing one up myself, actually. So, look, anyways, there's a couple of points I want to make here. One, just off the pale, there's something that people really don't probably understand about criminal activity, and that is a lot of criminals will purposefully schedule their large transactions of money, drugs, weapons, etc., during large public events, and they'll go into these areas where there's going to be a lot of people. They'll get into hotel rooms that make these deals go down, or in a back alley or a parking garage, and the reason they do this is because the police are usually very they use it as cover, because the police are very busy with the event, and they're not so focused on what they're going to be up to, and it also gives them cover to get in and out of these areas with the large amount of people. Two, this guy fits the profile of this Vegas shooter. He fits the profile of a money launderer for organized crime. I mean, let's look at all the facts here. He's got tons of money. He's just blowing it through the tables at MGM. We also know that the owners of these casinos are going into the Middle East, and ISIS still needs its funding, for all the human trafficking and the drugs. We know they're tied in with the cartels. No, this fits. And then he made his family rich. His brother said. He's sending money all over, but the thing that really stands out is that he's leading, obviously, a double life. He's staying off of social media completely, and nobody really knows what he's really up to. But he is blowing through cash at the tables, which is a classic money laundering scheme.
As is real estate.
And the real estate, oh yeah, look, I've been a builder for 35 years. If you want to inflate the cost of a building project or a development investment or something like that, it's very easy to do that, So the whole thing just reeks of money laundering right off the top. And we also know that the owners of these casinos are going into the Middle East, and they're opening things. I mean, like I said, follow the money. That's all you got to do is follow the money on this one. It's not. And look, if they even suspected this guy was skimming, he would have been disappeared into the desert, or they would have used him for their own purposes. So this also fits into the idea that maybe he was a patsy and was set up by his own people. You know, was it a deal that went wrong? I don't think it was a deal that went wrong. I think that they purposefully set him up. And you know what they say? Don't ever let a good crisis go to waste. So,
well, that's certainly been the case. Look, his entire lack of any social media history is indicative either of an organized crime figure or a government agent, one or the other. The fact that he's a retired accountant, but we track him both at MGM and I think it's the Silver Rivers Casino as being a high stakes gambler with special limits. These are all flags that something is amiss here. And it's abundantly clear that we're not getting the straight story from the authorities, at least not yet, which is why I think it's amazing and I think healthy for our democracy that you have an army of citizen journalists out there doing their own research. It's not like in 1963 when Abraham Zapruder is the only guy who has a movie camera running during the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy. We now know that that one piece of video film is sent to the Kodak lab in Rochester, New York, where it's altered and then sent back to the government. We don't have that issue. There are literally hundreds, maybe thousands of people with cell phone cameras running, and they capture all kinds of interesting things. It's a new day for American journalism, particularly since you have sites like InfoWars out there on the cutting edge with dozens of citizens journalists sending us their tips, their research, their videos. This is how we learned, for example, that the shooter was at two, not one, but two anti-Trump rallies. So the idea that he's non-political or that this doesn't have political overtones is absolutely false. Bill, thanks for your call. Owen, who's next?
Well, and I also just want to point out before we go to our next caller that ISIS continues to claim responsibility for this. They're now claiming that he was converted 6 months ago. And it just begs the question to me, we get all of this stuff from ISIS. We get their claims on the internet. We get their videos. We get their media. How are we not tracing, tracking, and arresting these people that are claiming responsibility for people dying? That is beyond me, Roger. Let's now go to Brian in Illinois. He's on the air with Roger Stone on the War Room. Go ahead, Brian. Brian, are you there? Last call for Brian.
Hello?
Yep. Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, I'm driving right now. I got pulled around. I've been waiting for an hour.
Brian, I'm going to need you to clean up your audio in 5 seconds or I got to move on to the next caller.
Okay, I'm here. There's a video. It's the name on YouTube is Epic and Fun. Epic in, not IN, just in. And you can clearly see somebody dressed as a security guard firing the weapon into the crowd. He's on the ground.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brian, but I disagree with you. I've analyzed that video. I do not think that security guard was firing at people.
So it doesn't look like a flashlight to me.
I'm not saying he had a flashlight. I'm just saying I don't think he fired at anybody.
Well, you can see a flash, and then you hear like gunshots at the same time.
All right, well, guys, pull up that video and we can do a live analysis. All right, Brian, thank you for the call. You know, Roger, I don't know. There's all these crazy rumors spiraling. For example, there was a picture that went out that looked like multiple windows were blown out of Mandalay Bay. It doesn't take a genius to look at that photo and realize it's photoshopped.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of Photoshop going on. That's why I think we have to be very, very careful. But
Absolutely.
Owen, look, we will be right back with more of your questions here on The War Room. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
All right, I want to clear the air on a couple things that are floating around out there and what a caller just brought up because, again, we're here to separate real news from fake news. First, the security guard that people are saying started firing on the crowd. I'm not buying that for a second. It looks to me, and Rob Dew's going to join me in a second here, that he was taking a defensive position to protect the people, and when the shooting ceased, decided he was going to move locations. I don't believe for 1 second that security guard was shooting people. Besides, you would have had eyewitnesses, I believe, that would have said so. So I'm just not buying that. And then there's the photoshopped picture, what I believe is photoshopped, of multiple windows being shot out at Mandalay Bay. And Dew, you're actually saying you think that could be part of a ventilation system because you can see it on the other side.
Right, exactly. And if you guys can pull up my computer real quick, you can see we're on a Google Street View of Mandalay Bay. And then I'm going to show you guys, there's the pyramid, the Luxor. Okay, so this is where the shooter was, right up here on this corner side, and then right here on this side, about 32nd floor. Now, let's just drive over here and then look. Oh, you can see blacked out windows right there. So it's on the opposite side of the hotel. And from what I was told, these are ventilation shafts. I don't know, maybe it's just black windows, but they are there. They're on the back side of the hotel, though. These weren't getting shut. And this is old. This is old Google Street View footage, probably from, I don't know. Let's see. This says...
Oh, look at those nice chemtrails, too.
I know. February 2017. Yeah, I noticed that as well. So I saw, when people started reporting that, I went on and just did this, exactly this. I drove around the hotel using Street View, but you come to the front, and there's nothing there you can see. And it's kind of hard, like this whole area here is this underground parking driveway thing where the famous taxi cab driver was driving through, where she was underneath the shooter for some time, and then the shots seemed to get far away. So that's just a couple things to clear up. People have been sending us information about these. Why aren't you showing the blown out windows? And okay, here they are. Let me show them to you again. Look, there they are. There's a nice clean view. But that is where your shooter was here, and then on the other side there. And in fact, they think he was only shooting out of this corner spot. They don't even think he was shooting out of the other room, because that room was locked from that side.
Yeah, and the door was closed too.
Right. So
yeah, why would he close the door, especially if he left the door open leading into the room?
Well, I tell you, the speculation is when he broke the window, could have been a gust of wind closed that door. Because anybody ever been in a room? You open it up, gust of wind comes through, starts slamming doors shut. Could have been he locked himself into one spot, and that's when he freaked out.
Yeah, I think that the multiple shooting galleries probably means multiple shooters. But again, we're just trying to hash all this out. Thank you, Rob, for breaking that down for us.
Yep.
Let's go back to the phone lines with Roger Stone. Let's go to Freddie in California. You're on the air with Roger Stone.
Hey, Owen?
Yep.
Hello? Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, first time
Freddie,
caller.
what's your question?
I was listening to Broadcastify to the police scanner that night, and it's an hour and 27 minutes. And there's some points that clicked or raised some flags with me. They reported three things that raised some flags with me. One was a dually truck that was fleeing from one of the hotels. Personally, I think that was probably some pedestrians that maybe parked there for the venue and then left. But they said that the police reported that and wanted to look into that. Then the police reported over the scanner that there was two people running on the runways. Now, I don't know what that is, but it was two people fleeing, and I believe that was on the other side of the Mandalay Bay. But
so perhaps by the airport?
No. So if you look at Mandalay Bay, it's on Las Vegas Boulevard and Russell. I used to live out there. And on the other side, I think what Dew was showing on the other side of Mandalay Bay, there's the freeway, the main freeway. So I think they were running towards that way, I believe. I don't know. But then there was another key thing that the control was saying that there was people saying there was a man in fatigues that was that they were pointing out. It was a man in a hat with fatigues, and he had a package with him, and he was walking away from a motorhome going into a hotel. But for some reason, people that were there at the venue that was fleeing pointed him out to the police saying, hey, look at that guy, look at that guy. So those were three things that I heard over the police scanner. That was an hour and 27 minutes that caught my attention.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other things in the police scanners that were odd too. They said multiple shooters. They said on the roof, the 4th floor, all of this stuff. We've had other people say that they saw people of interest running around out there. Obviously, while it's going down, it's all very confusing. I don't know, Roger, what do you make of all this?
The police scanner recordings are a cornucopia of interesting information. There's a lot to sort through there. Owen, I think we are weeks, maybe months away from trying to figure out exactly what did and did not happen. This, of course, is one of the side effects of the technological revolution, in which we have a lot more information to look at a public tragedy like this and try to determine what really happened. We're no longer reliant on the government's version. Here's a piece of breaking news. Congressman Walter B. Jones of the 3rd District of North Carolina has sponsored a resolution in the U.S. House of Representatives calling for the full release of all of the documents still held confidential by the U.S. government, by the National Archives, pertaining to the John F. Kennedy assassination. Kudos to Congressman Jones. As you know, yesterday, Gerald Posner, also a New York Times best-selling author, the author of Case Closed, the definitive defense of the very badly warped and incorrect Warren Commission conclusion that Lee Harvey Oswald killed John F. Kennedy and acted alone, joined with me to call for complete release of the 3,100 documents still held confidential by the National Archives pertaining to the Kennedy assassination. So you have Posner, a man of the left, myself, who I've written a book, as you know, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, which makes a very different case about how and why John Kennedy was murdered. We came together, and now we see Congressman Jones sponsoring this important legislation. So kudos to the congressman. I hope President Trump, who has the final say in this matter, will opt for transparency and release all of the remaining documents. I would point out to you, Owen, that President Barack Obama was faced with a similar decision when the Bay of Pigs files, controlled by the CIA, were up for release in the last year of his presidency. And rather than release them, he opted to delay that release for another 25 years. Hard to see how the public interest was served in that decision.
Hey, real quick, Owen, I just also want to add, in this whole thing, we have the FBI working with the Las Vegas sheriff. The FBI has a detailed history of going after and getting people to entrap themselves, getting them to try to agree to these things, using FBI informants to entrap people. So that's another angle that we really need to look at. Can we trust who's in the FBI at this point? Are they holdovers from the Obama administration? And if you look, I think Judge Napolitano, there's an old clip where he said 13 of the last 15 terror plots foiled by the FBI were all done by FBI informants. These were plots where the informant was finding the people, bringing the bomb to them, always providing everything, all the impetus to keep this thing going. So you can find that information anywhere, FBI using the informant policy to entrap people. This could also be a case that's going on in Las Vegas. So that's something people need to be looking out for.
And of course, there was the eerie post on social media talking about high incident events happening in Vegas. And then this happens, and if the FBI was involved, of course they want to hide the truth. One more segment with Roger Stone. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone, and you're here on The War Room with my colleague, Owen Schroyer. And joining us today, without the theme music from Warren Zevon, it's my friend Rob Dew. Why don't we go to another call? Brian in Minnesota. Brian, what's on your mind?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Brian.
I just appreciate the news you guys cover, unlike a lot of other people. I'm just a freedom-loving guy, you know, that has been concerned and tries to look into things that are going on in the world. And I feel from my first instincts of looking at this whole thing is, from my studying, I believe there's an occult on the highest levels that believes in a mystery Babylon and Freemasonry. They do a lot of these things that seems like ritual by the numbers almost. And when I look at the shooting and I see right away 58 dead, I see the date it's on, I see 23 guns, I see 23,000 people, I see the 91st Harvest Festival, I see all this stuff, and the FBI takes over and no information gets out on anything. I just believe that, if I was a police officer or some kind of agent or something, I would definitely, I don't know how that they couldn't think of that kind of stuff, I think there's obviously some very bad corruption on some very high levels. And according to my studies, they're not going to stop doing terrorist attacks until they get the guns. Until, I think that's, they want to disarm America. And, that's just what I see. And I just was wondering what you guys thought about that.
Well, Brian, you raise some very good points there. First of all, I think it's important that we make a distinction. We are not in any way disparaging the hardworking men and women in the front lines of the FBI or the Las Vegas Police Department. I think most law enforcement officers in this country are honest people trying to do an honest job and a public service and putting their lives on the line every day. The corruption, unfortunately, the politicization of those agencies exists at the very top. And that's where the corruption is. The key to this entire thing, in my opinion, is to remain open-minded to every possibility until we can assemble the facts, again, with the assistance of a veritable army of citizen journalists. You've heard them calling in to Owen. You've heard them calling in to Alex Jones. We have already ascertained invaluable information, not from the police, not from the FBI, but from this ragtag army of citizen journalists armed with their cell phone cameras and their computers. It's refreshing, in my opinion. Owen, let's go to another call.
I absolutely agree, Roger. And just to put a bow on the last caller's statements, if you're into following that occultism stuff and you follow this, you have to mention and point out that this happened at the foot of a pyramid. So maybe a Luciferian, occultist, human sacrifice at the foot of a pyramid. Perhaps that's what the caller's alluding to. Let's go to another caller with Roger Stone. This is Sean. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Owen. Hey, Roger. How's it going?
It's going.
All right. I just want to make a few comments about the brother Eric, the shooter's brother Eric. I did a FAA search on him, and he's a registered air traffic controller at Dyess Air Force Base in Texas, and it also lists an address that he lived on the base there as well, which I found interesting that, both the brothers are in aviation, which could tie into some sort of gun running possibly.
Yeah, certainly that's a theory that's been floated around. Go ahead, Roger.
Watching the brother on TV, watching his body language, seeing within 24 hours, sometimes within an hour, him contradicting himself as if he's gotten new talking points from someone. This is, I think, very, very curious. In the immediate aftermath of the Kennedy assassination, the district attorney of Dallas called a press conference and said this was obviously the work of a conspiracy. We are seeking multiple people in connection with the murder of the president, and we will keep the public informed. Then he got a call from the White House. 1 hour later, he held a new press conference. Lee Harvey Oswald is the murderer. He's a lone nut communist. and he acted alone. So we've seen this in history, and it appears to me like the brother is now reading talking points that have been prepared for him. He denies that his brother is a gun enthusiast. He denies his brother is a political activist, yet we have video of him at 2 anti-Trump rallies, and he has a veritable arsenal inside his room, an arsenal that nobody saw him transport through the main lobby and check-in of the Mandalay Bay. I've stayed at that hotel. It's a very fine casino hotel, extremely well managed. I know those folks. This is incomprehensible to me, and it's why citizen journalists, as well as the legitimate investigative bodies, need to continue to dig, and why every piece of videotape, while every tip needs to be run down and determined whether it is indeed valuable to putting together this mosaic.
Let's go to another call. And it's also worth mentioning that the sheriff did say that he thinks that there's probably accomplices. How else could he have gotten all the stuff in the room? Let's go to Cody in Ohio. Go ahead, Cody.
Hi, long-time listener, first-time caller. I was actually just calling. I've been doing some research, about 13 hours so far, actually, since the first time I heard about this. I don't know. I think I heard you guys talking about the MGM grant and the funding of groups. Dug into that a little bit, and our CEO, the chairman, James Murren, M-U-R-R-E-N, the MGM had sold 294,150 shares of their stock on September 8th of 2017 at $30.65. So looking at about $9 million out there. His wife, Heather Murren, was appointed by Senator Harry Reid in the Obama administration. And I think she was close affiliates to Hillary Clinton. I was kind of wondering what you guys thought about that. And also, other people with the MGM grant, let's see here. Corey?
Yeah, it's also worth mentioning that there were similar people that pointed out weird stock anomalies happening at Mandalay Bay. I don't fully understand that stuff. But, Roger, I'm not shocked by top leftists being tied to this stuff at all. We know that Democrats like to instill violence. We found that out with Project Veritas.
Well, look, I don't know Mr. Mirren, but I do know that Las Vegas has an extremely rigorous casino control regulatory system. And you cannot get a license to operate or be an executive in any of these casinos without a full, essentially, proctological exam. It is highly unlikely that anyone of an untoward character could achieve a license. That said, almost all of these casino executives have been active in politics, either Republican or Democrat. I'm not sure why the value of MGM stock would deviate because of this terrible tragedy, but in this case, I'm going to give Mr. Mirren a pass. I don't think there's anything necessarily untoward in that stock transaction. I'm sorry that his wife is an associate of paper bag Harry Reid, who, by the way, is a former Las Vegas casino control commissioner himself prior to his governorship. So I think we have enough time perhaps for one more call. But before we go there, let me say that my appearance today would be completely impossible without a healthy dose of brain force. This is one of my favorite products at the Infowars.com store. And right now, today, it's 50% off, which is, believe me, folks, a great deal. This gives me mental clarity and focus like you couldn't believe. And I commend it to you. And, of course, it's win-win. You get not only a first-rate product, but you help fund the revolution. You help us gird for the fight to preserve the First Amendment and a free, vibrant, and robust alternative media that we feature here at InfoWars. So, folks, do yourself a favor, but do us a favor at the same time. Go to the Infowars.com store and take advantage of this extraordinary sale.